Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Open Table Adventures. As always, I am Dan the Baker, and this is Table Talks, our little interview series where we talk about some of our favorite TTRPG content creators from all over the internet. Today, I am joined by my friend from the known unknown, Zach. Hi, how are
Oh,
you?
hey. Hi, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well. Super excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm excited to have you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Zach from the Known Unknown. I prefer the pronouns he, him. I have a tabletop TikTok and YouTube. They are both the Known Unknown TTRPG. My whole gimmick, I guess, the whole bit I do is I'm just trying to share information that might be interesting to you that can help you in your games. I talk about like old monsters that I've found. Talk about different indie tabletop games, their mechanics, and how you could use them in your games. I want to be like that guy that you like run into. That's like, hey, like, have you heard of this like monster from like third edition? It's kind of like weird and spooky. Like maybe use it in your game.
I got
Um,
monsters. Do you want monster?
yeah, I got some monsters. We got some quest ideas here. Like,
Yeah.
oh, have you heard about this mechanic? Like, yeah, I'm just that person that like it's at the party who like you stumble into and just tells you things that you may or may not want to know, and that's like my whole deal.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Um, I'd love to know, where does the name the known unknown come from? What was your inspiration behind that?
That is a very good question. It is something that I also like ask myself all the time. Like I have a general idea. So when I first started this like journey of creating tabletop stuff, I wanted to create a name that first of all I liked and also something that didn't just like nail me down to like one system. Like I didn't want to
Hmm.
be like Zach from D&D or anything like that just because I knew myself I get bored with things really quick. I knew I wanted to do something very wide, and I'm also a big fan of like the Twilight Zone and a big fan of like how pulp magazines used to be named, like Tales to Astonish, Tales
Hmm.
to Horrify, and I was like I want something mysterious which like you kind of want to question what's going on while also it being like somewhat memorable. So I came up with like the known unknown just because it's like honestly I don't know. It like came to
Hmm.
me. I was like Tales from the known unknown. I can do a lot with that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I landed.
Hmm. It's very
Um,
catchy. It captures that kind of pulp
yeah,
magazine vibe.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah. You talk a lot about kind of like monsters and mystery and stuff like that. Outside of like tabletop, are you a big like mystery horror fan?
yeah. If you actually can see my
As like
like
we can see,
background right
yeah.
here, there's a bunch of horror posters. Yeah, I am a big horror film guy. I actually went to school for filmmaking, and I'm a big like Stephen King reader. Big like R.L. Stein, Goosebumps. Like that's all I
Hmm.
read as a kid. So yeah, horror and mystery are like probably my favorite genres. I'll throw like sci-fi in there also.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that's what also like makes me talk more about monsters, like specifically
Hmm.
with my TikToks, because they're just such a core thing in all the stories I like, and I really think you can do some really interesting things with just a monster other than just thinking of it like a stat block.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
think
yeah,
of it
huge
as a
horror buff.
character. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I just read a little bit ago. I just read for the first time Stephen King's Under the Dome.
I have not read
Um,
that yet, but I've heard good things.
it was really good. It is so dense, but like once you get
Yep,
into it, it's really
yep,
good.
yeah.
What's your like your favorite like horror, either like horror book or movie, or both?
Um, it's a really good question.
You can give
I
me like a top
think
three if you want.
yeah, top three. I think like I really like Pet Cemetery, the book. I
Hmm.
think it's like the first book I ever read that really made me feel like very uncomfortable and very unsettled,
For
and it
sure,
also
yeah.
really introduced me to like Stephen King and the idea that like yeah, it's horror, but like horror also is like personal trauma and personal stuff, and like connecting all those things together. Um, I think I also have to like staying in Stephen King like top three horror things. The original like It TV series from the
Hmm.
90s was the first horror film horror series I ever saw, and that just like always left a
An
marked on
impression?
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess like third, I would have to say like The Lighthouse, like as like a recent just horror thing that I've been really into lately. A lot of A24's stuff that they have helped push out has been really cool and interesting. But there's so much. I could just go on forever, be like, oh, I also like this. Like those are probably like the three that come to my mind right now, though.
So they're more of the like, has a bit more of the like the psychological horror element to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of horror that not only is just like jump scares, but like also like the main character is very flawed and going through stuff, and like their personal stuff they're going through is like mirrored with the creature, the monsters, what's going on in the environment around them. Like that is like my bread and butter for like favorite type of horror.
Yeah. Reading horror, I think that's probably what I prefer. Watching horror, I'm a slasher fan. I just love the cheesy, like, you know, almost like slaughterhouse 80s 70s film. Like one of my favorite almost all-time movies is Texas Chainsaw.
It's so good. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is so good.
Yeah.
I watched it last week. Just like the original, it's like everything about like this is a TTRPG like interview. Like if you want to know about like how to create an environment and really get your players engrossed into like a setting, just like watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre and just like see what they do like with how they filmed it, with like just like the color grading, how like it's one of the few horror films like where the sun is very prevalent, but it still is so unsettling.
I think there's like 2 scenes I think filmed at night in that movie. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
It's
so good.
I think it's for movies it's Texas Chainsaw, Scream, and then not a slasher but The Descent.
The Descent is terrifying.
So good. That's also another great environmental
absolutely.
building that up. So that kind of segues into my next question is like what elements of like horror do you like to include in your like TTRPGs?
That's a very good question. So I think like as we were just talking atmosphere, I think I do like to run a variety of monsters. I can say that most sessions I feels like almost like I'm running a game of Supernatural or something, just because there's always a new type of monster. I don't really like throwing the same thing at my party. But I think the thing that I really pull from like my love of horror is the atmosphere, the music that I use in my games, the way I describe things, like the use of tension and silence. There's a lot of times where I'll just be like, you hear something in another room, describe the sound, and then I just let my players sit with it. They're like, what do you do now? And I think I get that a lot from horror films, just like the building of tension.
For sure, yeah. My train of thought went out the window. Sorry.
You were totally good.
I think it's also like it's because it's so hard to do like the classic like a jump scare, you know, in a TTRPG setting. Like you could get away with it maybe like once or twice, like but it comes off more comedic, I think.
It really does. Absolutely. Like I've done it a couple times where it's like the door like flies open and like there's a werewolf there and it does right. But it is more of the like clues and just like, hey, like something's a little strange here. Like, whoa, what's going on? Like that's so good in tabletop games.
Because I know speaking of like Supernatural and stuff, I know you're a fan of the game Monster of the Week.
I love Monster of the Week. So good.
Do you like to use that Monster of the Week vibe in other TTRPGs?
I would say yeah. So right now I'm actually my home game is become this like hex crawl. Like the group of people I play with, where like I finally was like, all right, let's switch to a hex crawl. And the idea was kind of like the Monster of the Week theme. Like it's still in Pathfinder 2nd edition, still fantasy and all that stuff. But I really wanted to go to like the roots of like, all right, you guys tell me which quest you want to go on, and then I'm gonna come up with like some Monster of the Week thing that is happening. Like right now, they just finished a quest where they had to go to the bottom of the ocean to like search through this abandoned ancient civilization like submarine thing, and that was totally like inspired by The Thing, and then the week before they went on a quest to figure out like why all these farmers were disappearing, and that was like a more of like a cult like Asmodeus thing going on. And I think yeah, personally, like I'm not someone who really does like here's a quest that starts now and it's going to end in like a year and everything is going to come together very coherently. I am someone whose brain is like always jumping around. It's like, okay, we did like the murder mystery last quest, let's jump and do something completely different but still in the same world next week.
Yeah, that's I kind of one of my home games is very similar to that, where they all like they work for a basically an adventuring corporation, that
Nice.
sends them out on like these missions. So it has that kind of
Yeah.
like we'll do. It's usually like 4 to 5 sessions on a mission. So you're like and like there's the big bad for each one, and like
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's great, especially for games that meet less regularly, because
Oh,
like
absolutely.
you don't have to remember this huge overarching story, that's been going on for
Yeah.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a big part of it too, is like now that me and my group is getting like older, we all have like other responsibilities and stuff. We still try to meet every week, every 2 weeks, but like a lot of us have stuff going on. So it is sometimes easier to just run those quests that are like, okay, self-contained story, 4 to 5 sessions, like you said, everyone's going to remember it. I'm running the game and I'm not going to remember what happened like 3 months ago. That's just not how my brain operates. But I've found myself leaning into that. I've also found myself leaning into like tabletop games like Monster of the Week and more Powered by the Apocalypse games that really are great at those like smaller stories, those smaller quests. And I found myself more interested in telling those smaller stories as I've played more tabletop games.
For sure. I'd love to now transition into talking about how did you first get into like tabletop? What was your first experience with that?
Good question. So the first tabletop game that I've like officially played was probably Pathfinder First Edition in like 2012, 2013. But I've been interested in like tabletop games and fantasy games for way longer than that. I remember like in the late 90s, 2000s, when like malls were still very like prominent. There being a games workshop there and going and checking out all the miniatures. Could never afford them or anything, but they also had like the workshop magazines, and they also had like Dragon magazine and stuff. For those who don't know, Dragon, it's either Dragon or Dragons magazine. It was Wizards of the Coast magazine that they would put out like every couple months from like the creation of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons forward, and I think it's digital now, in which they would like have monsters and like quests and stuff you could put in your game. And I remember not getting any of like the miniatures or the books or anything because I didn't know what those were, but I remember collecting some of those magazines and being like, this is really cool. I really want to like tell stories like this one day. It took me way longer than I wished to start playing tabletop games. I tried in high school, but unfortunately I had like a not great experience with my local game store. Back then, just a lot of people who like wanted to gatekeep and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, which that's still a problem today. Support your local game store. Just, sometimes they're not great. And then like, yeah, 2013, I finally got a group together after working retail. I was like, hey, I know one of them like played games before. I was like, hey, if I buy all the Pathfinder stuff, like, will you run some games for us? And that happened. And then 2013-14, I started playing D&D 5th edition. I started my home group around that time, and ever since I've just been playing tabletop games like every week or so since then.
Nice. And yeah, you can definitely it's funny you saying like, oh, I picked up this magazine that all had these different quests and monsters, and like, oh, now I make content that's all just different quests and monsters. Yeah.
It's almost like a line. It's like
Yeah.
that event that happened at the mall, me picking up that magazine, and to like the content I create.
It's a
like,
domino for sure. Yeah.
It really is.
What inspired you to start like posting on TikTok and YouTube? What was that like that domino?
Yeah. So that's actually like also kind of a funny story. So I graduated from college 2019 in December with a degree in filmmaking. Obviously, pandemic started a couple months later. So I had all these skills. Before I was working on like documentaries, and I was mostly like a camera person and like audio person. Like I usually worked on sets and stuff. But with everything getting locked down and stuff, I still had like a creative drive in me. I was still playing tabletop games all the time. And I was like, I have all these skills. I'm going to have to transfer them to like editing and stuff because that's how I'm going to have to get work. And I like tabletop games, so why don't I try to combine that? And actually the first iteration of my channel, I think if you go back like 3 years, I was actually a horror movie review channel before I switched to tabletop games. I was like talking about like, I was just reviewing like a movie every like couple days, and then I like think I made a video on like the bugbear of D&D, like when I was talking about horror, and then I was like, wait, this is kind of like neat. Why don't I just keep making stuff about tabletop games? And that just kind of happened. It like really helped me not only like transfer all my skills to online and being an editor, but also it gave me something to do.
I think that's definitely a lot of the people I've talked to. That's kind of, it's like the pandemic was, obviously awful thing that happened, but also it's like so many of us, that's where we got our start in doing this, like especially with, I feel like with like TikTok specifically, because it was like, oh, that's like a kids app, that's where people go on and just like dance and stuff.
Exactly. I was like, people just dance on there. Like I don't dance like on camera and stuff. Like what am I gonna do? And then I think I just downloaded it. I was like, like I don't know what to do. Like I tried streaming. I streamed some video games before I went on TikTok and stuff. And like that was fun and everything, but I was still missing like a lot of the creative process that I liked doing. But yeah, I've also met so many creators that are like, we all started like 2020, 2021, like because what else were we gonna do?
For sure. So you talked about you got you have your degree in film. I'd love to know if that anything from that translates into your like gameplay, your game style.
Yeah, 100%. I think not in ways that people like expect though. Like when I first started, I did like narrate a lot of my scenes with camera angles just because I'd be like long shot and stuff. But I think the way that those cross over is just by willing to like collaborate in game. I'm more interested in like running a game in which like my players almost have like as much stakes and as much say in what's going on as I do, and I think I really got that from my background in filmmaking. My like senior thesis before I graduated was on films that were non-narrative, and the whole point was I was making like these like sculptures with TVs and stuff that were all these just like places and locations and events, just these experiences that I wanted you to go and just like put yourself into, and then like come up with like what it makes you feel. What are you thinking with that? And that's just like tabletop games. Like it's just a blank like experience that we're creating, and just like having everyone being able to play in that experience and create like a story within. I think that is like really the crossover there is just the willing to like collaborate and just the willing to be like, hey, we're all a team here trying to tell the story, like what's going on here, just like working on a film set. And it's just another form of storytelling. It's just another way to tell stories. It's just another medium of art in my mind. At least tabletop games are like it is a game, but it's also just a way to tell stories with people.
That's I've been talking to a lot of people about just like the tabletop and like actual play as an art form, and like as absolutely. How it kind of compares to like mainstream media, like mainstream Hollywood. And it's so interesting just seeing how like the collaborative storytelling element of it compared to like just a regular movie.
100%. I think I think there is like a movement nowadays to consider tabletop games more of like an art. I've always considered it of like as like it's a tool. It's a tool to tell stories, and I think with like the amount of actual plays that are out there now, and so many people doing so many like cool and unique twists on how like they're doing their actual plays, I think it's starting to really come to fruition. Like, what is an actual play? What are tabletop games? Like, how are we using this to like tell stories? How are we using it to communicate with each other? And I'm really excited about that. There's a lot of people like in the indie tabletop space who are now making games too that are like about like what it means to tell a story within a tabletop game, and it's wonderful. It's absolutely cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. I would love now to talk a little bit about. Sorry, wow, my train of thought is nowhere on the tracks.
Totally good.
It's been a long day. It's the first day of the month. I would love to just kind of transition now into talking about what kind of stories do you like to tell? Like we kind of touched on it a little bit. Like you like those kind of shorter, like a Monster of the Weeky stories, but like I think like overarching, like what kind of plots do you prefer?
It's a really good question. I think, like, if I looking back at like everything I've ever run, like, I feel like I run into the Brendan Lee Mulligan thing, where like a lot of like the villains are capitalism in a way, and like just huge factions. But I think like honestly, the real stories that I like to tell are like real like personal stories about the player characters, like. Yeah, there's all this stuff going on in the world around you. It's not really about what's happening in the world. It's more about how the characters are reacting to the world. How are they dealing with like their personal selves when the dragon just came and like attacked a kingdom? Like, yeah, they're gonna go try to slay the dragon and stuff, but like, how does that affect not only like them, but like the NPCs they interact with? Like I said, like when I first started, I did tell more like I tried to do like the whole Game of Thrones thing. I think I'd try to do like all the things that, like a lot of new game masters run into. It's like I want to create this like super interconnected world where like everything makes sense and like there's a grand story, a huge tapestry, and I think I've really narrowed that down, like, as I've played games. And now it is really about, like, what are the personal stories? Like, I want to make memorable NPCs, like, small events. Like, each session should be equally as important to, like, the grand scale of things because it's more personal. Like, those are the kind of stories I want to tell, is, like, things of how people react to the bigger things. Not just, like, trying to, like, destroy the big evil guy at the end, but, like, how does the big evil guy like reflect on the players, and like how are like towns and people dealing with all this stuff?
That definitely just going back to like you talking about that collaborative storytelling, that definitely tracks with that. Like I always whenever I have players like making their backstory, I love to kind of make it with them a little bit.
Oh, 100%.
Like, you know, they have their ideas and I'm like, oh, this could, you know, in the world at large, like this is something that's happening, this can affect how your backstory is. I think that character driven stories are my favorite to run for sure.
Yeah, they're my favorite to run, they're my favorite to play in. There's like even like solo tabletop games and stuff, like those are like the ones I've been gravitating towards, is like the personal experience. Like it's just it's something I like that could change in like a year or two when I want to go back to like the bigger stories, but I just I think character stories, that's what I'm really interested in.
I have one more question. I would just like to know, where do you, like when you make your videos and stuff about these various monsters and stuff, like where do you go for those? Like what is your like inspiration, I guess, your for your individual videos?
That is a very good question. And it really depends on the moment. I do have like a decent collection of like PDFs of like older like monster manuals and stuff that I do like browsing through from time to time to get inspiration. I also, there's like a lot of like forums and stuff where people will be discussing like, hey, this is my favorite monster, and I also like going into those forums because it is cool to see like what people like have used in their games and how they've used them, and like the different ways people remember how monsters were used. I think a lot of the time I don't have a plan on making the video until like I'm just like late at night, like looking on the internet being like, oh, what if like there's a monster that's underwater? Like, has anyone made like a cool like zombie underwater yet? And then a game will pop up like 13th Age or something and be like, oh, here's a monster from that. I'll be like, okay, cool. And it's mostly just like whatever interests me at that moment is like what
Hmm.
I'm going to be making a video on, because it's going to be the thing that I've stumbled upon.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that will brings us actually really well into our game portion of the
Cool.
interview.
Awesome.
Today, I have a game for you that I am calling Mother Knows Best.
Nice. I like it already.
So I sent my mother, shout out Karyn. I sent her five monsters, five
Okay.
classic D&D monsters,
I'm
and
so
told her
excited.
to describe them in 5 words or less. I'm going
Okay.
to read you those descriptions, and you are going to let me know what those monsters are, or what you think those
Oh
monsters
boy.
are.
This sounds awesome. I'm very excited.
I can give you some hints if you want. 'Cause
Yeah.
some of them are a little vague because my mom, knows nothing about D and
Right.
D, so
Yeah.
she doesn't
Definitely.
know. This could be something else. How confident are you? Let's get 1 to 10.
I'm gonna say like, depending like on like how classic these monsters are, I'm gonna say like a 7. Like I feel like I'm gonna be able to visualize them, but there's so many monsters with different names that I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
might be like, I don't know.
Right, that totally makes sense. Our first quote from my mother is the demon child of a chicken and a hawk.
Oh, a demon child of a. Is that a cockatrice?
I knew you were gonna say cockatrice. I'm gonna let you do another guess because it's not a cockatrice.
Okay, can you give me the quote again?
Demon child of a chicken and a hawk.
Chicken. Is it a rock?
It is. It is a rock.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. I think she like
I
looked
think
at
the
the
chicken
feet.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the chicken feet is what got her. I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a pretty good description of what a rock is, especially if you look at some like the older art.
Hmm.
For it, like it does have like those chicken feet.
Yeah, I think if I told her how big it was, she might have changed it a little
Right,
bit.
that's
Because
fair.
just sent her this picture that has no size comparison.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
But yeah, you got that one. So number two, we have the Dark Tentacle Lord.
The dark. Oh, is that a gibbering mouther? Dark tentacle lord. That's or a mind flayer.
Is that your final guess?
Yeah, I want to go mind flayer.
It is a mind flayer.
Okay.
That was
I don't know
yeah.
why I'm thinking like gibbering mouther only has like a couple. I think I just tentacles like make me go to gibbering mouther because it's one of my favorite monsters because it's just
Hmm.
like, hey, do you want to see this really wicked thing that looks like bubble gum with a bunch of eyes and a bunch of tentacles?
It's
Gibbering
yeah.
mouther.
Yeah, no, it's mind flayer. What's the next one? The next one is Baby Blue-Eyed Squid.
Baby blue-eyed squid.
Hmm.
I want to say like beholder. I
I'll
don't know
say.
what the.
She also said, "Oh, he's very cute," in reference to this creature.
Is it a flump?
It is a flump.
Nice. Flumps
It
are
is a
also
flump.
awesome.
Yeah, and also very cute, so it makes sense.
Very cute. Like
Yeah.
that's all I had to hear. I was like, very cute. Flump is
Flump.
like the cutest creature
Hmm.
in D&D.
It was so fun. I like texted her the picture, and she immediately said that. And it's like, oh, adorable.
I think the eyes. I was like beholder. Then I was like, what color eyes are beholders?
Yeah, I don't know if they're baby blue.
Yeah, that would be a wild twist if all beholders just have like
Hmm.
beautiful like blue eyes and just like
Yeah.
dreamy.
Here's our fourth one.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're gonna get this one. Triple threat piranha sea creature.
Triple threat piranha sea creature.
Yeah. Which was my nickname in high school, actually. So it's weird.
I want to. Oh. Oh, what is there? Is it a sanguine?
It is
I guess.
not. Do you want a hint?
Yeah.
This creature, it has a low challenge rating, but it does have legendary actions.
Okay. Now my brain's doing that thing where it's like, oh, is it an aboleth? No. Yes, aboleth?
It's an aboleth, yeah.
Okay, I was like, aboleth is like low CR. I was trying to think like I think unicorns are like the lowest level that have legendary actions, and I was like, there has to be something above it. Nice.
I don't
That
know
is a
where she
triple threat.
triple threat piranha sea creature. I was like, I guess, yeah, sure.
Those are triple threats.
Yeah.
I feel like I've killed a couple players with aboleths. Definitely triple threat.
They're a threat for sure.
Yeah.
Our last one is Blood Arrow Dark Rider.
Blood Arrow Dark Rider.
Yeah, which are just 4 separate words unrelated to each other.
That's amazing. That's also the next like name of my like big bad in my game. Blood Arrow Dark Rider.
Yeah, or it's like a metal band. I'm not sure.
Also awesome metal name. Blood Arrow. I want to say like a Death Knight or like a Nightmare, but I guess like a Nightmare is more of a horse. Blood Arrow. I'm trying to I'm like filtering through like a bunch of D&D art in my head right now. I'm thinking like what uses an arrow in its art?
I would say you are close with Death Knight.
There's like a thing that rides a nightmare. That I can't remember that I think starts with an N. I think I'm gonna just I don't think I want to get this. I'm just gonna say Death Knight. And if it's you said it's close, so
It's close. It's a white.
Oh, that makes sense. Whites do have like all like the regular adventure like attacks and stuff, don't they?
Yeah. I don't know where she got Rider from. I think maybe she was like, oh, it's kind of Ghost Rider-esque.
Right. Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Those are actually some pretty like good descriptions of like those.
Yeah. For someone who's never seen any of these before. Yeah.
They fit the theme for every single one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call the aboleths triple threats from now on.
So thank you for playing. Thank you, Mom, for
thank you for those descriptions. They were awesome. They were wonderful.
Great. That brings us to the portion of our interview I call our TTRPG Spotlight. It gives you a chance to spotlight something going on in the TTRPG world you think people should be paying attention to. What do you have for us today?
Yeah, so when you sent me like this segment, I was like, cool, I have this idea. Then I like kept thinking about it. I was like, wait, but I need to like also bring up like this person. I'm like, oh wait, about this other person too. Like we really live in a very good time for a lot of really cool and unique games coming out. But I did come up with like 3 people / studios that I think really anyone who wants to check out like what storytelling can be with tabletop games should check out. The first one is Cassie Mothwin. They have created some really cool stuff, specifically the sticker game. I don't know, have you heard of the sticker game?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So the sticker game, for those who have not seen it or played it, is this incredibly well-produced solo tabletop game in which you play it with like stickers. You have this audio log, like I said, that is very well produced. Some of like the best produced things I've seen from a solo tabletop game, and you are walked through this really like funny and charming and interesting, like somewhat sci-fi story, and you are answering prompts with stickers and stuff, and it is truly one of the most unique experiences I've ever had while playing a tabletop game, and I think is really interesting and a really good game to like show like what can tabletop games do. Cassie Mothwin also, they've created like some other really cool games lately, and they're always just like making new things that are always just blowing me away with like the different mechanics and different ways that they are approaching how to design a tabletop game. The next one I want to talk about is Fari RPGs, another really wonderful indie tabletop creator. They created the Breathless system, which is this open source system that you can use to make your own games. It's based off of a like zombie survival game that they made, but you can use it, and I think it does a really good job at like really combining narrative choices with like actual mechanics. I think a lot of story-based games like kind of think less about the mechanics for
Mhm.
like just playing a character, but I think the Breathless system does a really good job. They also created a game called Firelights, which has been my favorite solo tabletop game the last couple of months, where you play this like firefly creature who is trying to relight these beacons to bring people back to like the underworld. Fantastic. And then the last studio I want to talk about is Pandian Games, which I have a couple of their games on my shelf over here. But the game I wanted to talk about specifically is a Storyteller by them, and I think it has the most. If I had to like go up to someone and be like, "Hey, what is a tabletop game?" I would show them Storyteller, because
Mhm.
it breaks down the concepts of like what it means to play a tabletop game so simply. The game itself, you are playing as a bunch of people around a campfire, and you are telling a scary story. But the thing, like the big mechanics here, is every time you get to a decision or you are trying to figure out the outcome for something that is happening with the story, you come up with the mechanics yourself. So instead of rolling dice, if there are two player characters in conflict,
Mhm.
you can have them do rock, paper, scissors, and whoever wins, like the outcome favors them. Or it could be like, oh, the monster is coming to get someone. Everyone has 2 minutes to go find the biggest stick around them if you were like playing it in the woods. And
Mhm.
whoever has like the shortest one would die. And it just really emphasizes the idea of like collaborative storytelling, but by also bringing mechanics into it, by like being like, okay, what mechanic, what game, what thing can you do here to really help you push the story forward. Those are just like 3 of my favorite right now, but like I said, there is so many cool creators out there creating some really interesting games.
Mhm.
Just go check out like itch.io and just look through the physical books section, and you will probably find something that you're like blown away with.
We're yeah, golden age of TTRPGs for sure.
We absolutely are.
Mhm.
We absolutely are. It is astonishing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll make sure
Yeah,
that all of those will be in the description down below for you guys to check out.
awesome.
To finish off our interview, I would love to just hear what you have projects going on you want people to check
Yeah.
out, where people can find you on the internet.
Yeah, so my TikTok and my YouTube are both the known unknown TTRPG. I guess I also have a Twitter/X/whatever it's called at this point. That's called Thy Known Unknown. I don't actually post on there, but it exists. Um, Things that are going on. For the first time in like a year, I'm like regularly posting again, so you should expect like 1 or 2 videos out a day. I'm kind of trying out some new formats. I'm gonna try this new video series that's taking like old school infomercials and turning those into magic items for your fantasy games. So that should be fun, and that'll be coming out soon. And I've also been working on my first tabletop game. It's going to be a solo tabletop game that is going to be hopefully coming out in December, called 1,000 Words to Die, which kind of everything we've talked about kind of goes into it. It is a game based off of like Stephen King's Misery and the
Mm.
Alan Wake games, in which it is a solo tabletop game in which you have 1,000 words to write. Each time you get a prompt, there will be a word count. Once you hit 1,000 words, the story is over. You have 1 more sentence to write. The premise is that you are an author who used to be very successful, no longer successful. You've made a deal with some supernatural force to write a bestseller, but now as you are about to finish the book, you are realizing that everything you are writing is coming to life, and you have to now challenge yourself to either finish the book or to try to survive the thing you have created. And it's fun. It's been fun to create my own tabletop game, so that should be
Mhm.
coming out sometime in December, and it's called 1,000 Words to Die. So check that out if this is December.
Yeah, this should be probably, if not in December, close to December, so people should be able to check that
Perfect.
out soon.
So go check that out.
All those links and stuff will be down below. If that game's out, we'll make sure it's down there. Zach,
Awesome.
thank you so much for coming by
Yeah,
and
thank you.
talking. It's such a
Yeah.
good time. Um,
Yeah, this has
I
been a blast. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course. As always, am Dan the Baker at Dan_the_Baker, wherever you want to find me on the internet. You can always find me here at Open Table Adventures. Check out all the things we have going on. We have interviews with several other TTRPG creators out there. We have some recipe videos that have come out recently. We have all of our actual plays. Park Strangers, our Monster of the Week game. There's Neptune's Revenge or Call of Cthulhu game. Check out we had our Halloween one shot, our holiday one shots coming out soon. So many things for you guys to check out, so make sure you stick around. Thank everyone so much for joining us, and you are always welcome to pull up a seat. Bye bye now.
Bye, everyone.